For many sports fans, it's easy to associate a player with a certain team. The player either made a great impact or had a special moment while in that uniform. Some players spend their whole careers at one team and are forever immortalized in that jersey. But for some, things happen and they're forced to leave that longtime team. Here's 10 Baseball Hall of Famers who finished their illustrious careers with teams you'd never thought they'd play for, let alone finish their careers with. Honorable mentions go to Dizzy Dean with the Browns, Jim Thome with the Orioles, and Hank Greenberg with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Starting at number 10, Hal Newhouser and the Cleveland Indians. It's become apparent to me that many baseball fans aren't familiar with Mr. Newhouser, so let's start by putting some respect on his name. Prince Hal was the best pitcher during the World War II era of baseball and has a resume as highly regarded as his nickname. This man was a 7-time All-Star, won the World Series in 1945, led the majors in ERA twice, and even won a pitching triple crown. Oh, and I almost forgot, he won back-to-back MVPs in 1944 and 1945. He remains the only pitcher to accomplish such a feat. He was signed by the Detroit Tigers at age 18 for $500, a sum of money that the Detroit native found unimaginable. Ironically, a representative from the Cleveland Indians came by and offered Hal and his parents a combined $19,000 just 10 minutes later. Although they were a few minutes late, they'd be back later. As mentioned, Hal signed with the Tigers and did all those amazing, spectacular, legendary things. But you'll notice a common theme with almost every player on this list, and you'll see it as we go on, and that's regression. Newhouser suffered a significant arm injury in 1950, which happened to be his final season as a starter. With his workload compromised, he made the move to the bullpen, where he was never the same. After 15 mostly successful years in Detroit, Hal was released in July of 1953. But as hinted at, the Indians made their return to Hal's life. The Tribe signed him in April of 1954, where he was used as a reliever for 2 seasons. Newhouser hung up the cleats after only 2 appearances with Cleveland in his second season with them in 1955. It somehow took Hal until 1992 to get inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame through the Veterans Committee, which I personally found shocking. Either way, the man was officially in the Hall of Fame where he belonged. Prince Hal was born in Detroit and was able to call it home for almost all of his career. Those 2 seasons in Cleveland stand out like a sore thumb and a sad visualization of a legend's regression. Number 9, Ron Santo and the Chicago White Sox. Cubs legend Ron Santo had one of the shortest careers on this list, but he made a great impact in his only 15-year career. The 9-time All-Star and 5-time Gold Glover was a big part of almost every Cubbies team he played for. Santo was one of the best at reaching base, leading the league in walks 4 times and on-base percentage twice. Santo's switch to this random team was part of a historic moment in players' rights. Santo became the first player to veto a trade through the 10-5 rule. As a result of the collective bargaining agreement from the 1972 MLB strike, the 10-5 rule allowed for players with at least 10 years of Major League service and the last 5 years with the same team to veto trades that were not in favor. Santo, who had spent 14 years in Chicago with the Cubs, vetoed a trade in 1973 that would have sent him to the California Angels. The reason behind his veto was a great desire to stay in the city of Chicago. The Cubs respected that and worked out a trade between them and the White Sox. The Northsiders acquired 4 players for Santo, who became a member of Chicago's South Side team. In what would be his final season, Santo underperformed with the Chi Sox, hitting only .221, the lowest single-season batting average of his career. He retired following the 1974 season, finishing his career on the wrong side of Chicago. Through the Veterans Committee, like Newhouser, Santo was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 2012, 2 years after his unfortunate passing. Of course, Santo was inducted as a Cub, where his legend was made. Number 8, John Smoltz, the Boston Red Sox, and the St. Louis Cardinals. The most recent entry on this list, Smoltz played his final game in 2009 as a member of the St. Louis Cardinals. He only appeared in 7 games for the first-place Cardinals, as the Cards picked him up that August in preparation for a deep playoff run. As to why this is random, we must go back to the beginning. Smoltz was almost a lifetime Atlanta Brave, like pretty close. Originally drafted by the Tigers, Smoltz was traded to the Bravos in 1987 for veteran pitcher Doyle Alexander, and from there, a legend was born. Smoltz spent 20 years in Atlanta, winning a World Series in '95, a Cy Young Award in 1996, and was one of the best starting pitchers in baseball until he underwent Tommy John surgery in 2000 to repair a torn UCL. This basically meant that in the prime of his career, Smoltz needed to hit the reset button and come back with a different approach. He returned in 2001 as a starter, but quickly made the move to the bullpen after a disappointing beginning to the season. Smoltz had great success in every aspect of baseball up until this point. He'd even won a Silver Slugger Award for the National League's best hitting pitcher in 1997. But until 2001, he had started quite literally every game of his career. 356 appearances, 356 starts. But not surprisingly, he succeeded out of the bullpen. In 2001, he pitched to a 3.36 ERA and went 10 of 11 on saves. The following year, he became the official closer of the Braves and definitely made the most of it. Smoltz had 55 saves, made the All-Star team, and finished third in Cy Young voting, which is an extremely tough task as a reliever. He followed up the breakout year with 2 more elite seasons as a closer, with 45 and 44 saves in 2003 and 2004 respectively. Prior to the 2005 season, management made the decision to move Smoltz back to the starting rotation, as he once again became the team's ace. Following 3 elite seasons as a closer, would Smoltz have trouble moving back to longer outings? Not a chance. John didn't miss a beat, going 14-7 with a 3.06 ERA, making the All-Star team for a 7th time in his career. For the next 2 seasons, Smoltz remained the Bravos' ace. Shoulder troubles were looming, and eventually showed their head in 2008. Smoltz was placed on the 15-day disabled list in April for right shoulder inflammation. He attempted to return as a relief pitcher again, but after 1 blown save, he was placed back on the DL. He elected to undergo season-ending shoulder surgery, ending his season and his time in Atlanta. His contract was up, making him a free agent. He held a workout in Atlanta and picked up interest from the Boston Red Sox, who signed him to a 1-year, $5.5 million deal. Unfortunately, Smoltz was never able to get comfortable in Boston and struggled during his time there. He was designated for assignment that August after pitching to an 8.33 ERA and a losing record. He was granted his release and picked up by the St. Louis Cardinals, which takes us back to the beginning. Like Boston, Smoltz couldn't hit his stride and finished that season with a 1-3 record and 4.26 ERA during his time in the Lou. Smoltz retired following that season and was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2015 as a Brave. A unique journey with a not-so-happy ending for one of the best pitchers of a generation. Number 7. Christy Mathewson and the Cincinnati Reds. The oldest entry on this list, Christy Mathewson's career path is defined by several unique transactions. As a young 20-year-old, Mathewson was signed by the New York Giants in 1900. He was coming off a season in the Virginia-North Carolina League, where he pitched to a 20-2 record, undoubtedly gaining New York's interest. However, after a disappointing first 3 starts, in which he racked up a 5.08 ERA while going 0-3, the Giants expressed their displeasure, going so far as to return him to the Virginia-North Carolina League and demand their money back. The Cincinnati Reds found interest in Christy and picked him up in the... Wait, hold on a second. Let me check my notes. The 1900 Rule 5 draft. Not exactly sure why this happened, but later that month the Giants traded back for Mathewson, giving the Reds future Hall of Fame pitcher Amos Rusi. Rusi only pitched 3 games for Cincinnati before hanging up the cleats at age 30. Perhaps there were things going on with Rusi that made him so low risk, like the fact that he didn't pitch in 1899 or 1900, but the story's about Christy, so let me get back to him. After getting signed, released, signed, traded, and signed, Mathewson's illustrious career could finally begin. Matty was the best pitcher in baseball for most of his 17-year career in New York. In 1915, Mathewson and the Giants began to decline. The Giants went from second place that year prior to dead last in the National League. The man who revolutionized the screwball, Christy, threw under 200 innings for the first time since 1909 and had the highest ERA of his career, although it was only 3.68. Christy, now 34 years old, expressed great interest in managing. Come 1916, he had a 3-year deal in place with, you guessed it, the Cincinnati Reds. The official trade saw Mathewson's career come full circle as he rejoined the team that once picked him up. Matty was immediately the player-manager of the Reds, but only wound up playing in 1 game for Cincinnati, which is pretty much what puts him on this list. Mathewson was the best pitcher in baseball for almost a decade, and did it in a Giants uni, so of course it's going to be a little odd. For those wondering, his 1 start with Cincy was successful, I guess? He went the full 9 innings, giving up 15 hits and 8 earned runs. Luckily, the Reds, who finished the season 60, 93, and 2, were able to push out 10 runs, giving Mathewson the 373rd and final win of his career. Mathewson was inducted into the inaugural class of the Baseball Hall of Fame, as a Giant, of course. He joined a couple other names on this list in that historic 1936 class. Number 6, Billy Williams and the Oakland Athletics. Billy Williams was one of the most consistent hitters of his generation. The 1961 Rookie of the Year spent 16 seasons as a member of the Chicago Cubs, receiving MVP votes in 8 of those 16 years. In 1974, 36-year-old Williams recorded his lowest batting average, 280, since 1967, and hit under 20 home runs in a season for the first time in his career. In a year where the Cubs finished 66 and 96, dead last in the then NL East, it seemed like a good time to rebuild. Therefore, the Cubs went ahead and traded Williams in the offseason to the Oakland Athletics for infielder Manny Trio, Darrell Knowles, and Bob Locker. specifically by Chicago sports columnist Bill Gleason, went from leading a team to falling into a depth role. Billy joined a team consisting of future Hall of Famers Reggie Jackson and Raleigh Fingers, as well as star pitchers Vida Blue and Ken Holtzman. Williams added to the A's success as they finished first in the AL West and made it all the way to the ALCS. Williams finished third on the team in homers with 23 and proved that he could still play ball at age 37. Billy was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1987, of course donning a Cubbies hat on his plaque. Number 5, Eddie Mathews, the Houston Astros and Detroit Tigers. For most of his career, Eddie Mathews was a force to be reckoned with. One of the most revered hitters of his generation, Eddie hit 512 career home runs, 493 of which were with the Milwaukee Braves. But after over 2,200 games with Milwaukee and now Atlanta, he was shipped off to Houston in exchange for Bob Bruce and Dave Nicholson. So now 35-year-old Mathews was starting first baseman on one of the worst teams in the league, the Houston Astros. The Astros finished 69-93 that season, but Mathews hit a massive milestone despite an overall down year. On July 14th, Mathews hit his 500th career home run off of fellow Hall of Famer and entrant on this list, Juan Marichal. At the time, he was only the 7th player in MLB history to achieve the feat. Following 101 games with Houston, Mathews was traded again, this time to the Detroit Tigers. He finished his career with Detroit, playing only 67 games in 2 seasons. Performance-wise, it was a disappointing ending to a legendary career, but it ended at the highest peak. The Detroit Tigers defeated the St. Louis Cardinals in 7 games, earning Eddie his second and final World Series ring. At the time of his retirement, Mathews held MLB third baseman records for games played, assists, and chances. The 7th ever member of the 500 home run club can never be forgotten, but perhaps we could slip his stints with Houston and Detroit under the rug. Number 4, Yogi Berra and the New York Mets. There are few Yankees that are more synonymous with the pinstripes than Yogi Berra. Berra won 10 World Series championships with the Bronx Bombers, more than anyone in not only the team's history, but baseball history. With 3 MVPs and 18 trips to the All-Star game, there's no denying of how special of a player Yogi was. All this made it quite the shock when the Yankees decided to release Berra after 20 years with the organization. Despite no longer being the starting catcher, the 38-year-old hit .293 that year, showing no real sign of slowing down. But Berra had the 3rd highest salary on the team. For a player coach entering his age 39 season, it just wasn't worth it to keep Yogi around. The Yankees released Berra following the 1963 season, making him a free agent. Berra had clear intentions of managing a team, specifically the Yankees, but like the Babe, who you'll hear about later, the Yankee ownership didn't think he was ready to manage. Unlike the Babe though, another team gave him a shot at managing. It just happened to be the crosstown rival New York Mets. The image of any Yankee legend in the blue and orange will never not look wrong, but Yogi made it work in the best way. Berra only played 4 games for the Mets as a player before becoming a manager. Berra was generally successful as Mets manager, having a winning record in 2 of his 3 full seasons, including the NL pennant in 1973. Despite the Mets being 56-53 by August of the 1975 season, the Mets canned Berra. His final managerial record with the Mets, .292 and .296. Berra, a Yankee at heart, returned to manage the team in 1984. But still, it's hard to forget the sight of Yogi hanging out across town. Number 3, Juan Marichal, Boston Red Sox and Los Angeles Dodgers. I told you guys you'd see him. Juan Marichal was well known as a San Francisco Giant. After 14 seasons with the ball club and 10 All-Star appearances, it was shocking to see San Fran part ways with their Dominican dandy. But it wasn't without reason. A severe allergic reaction to penicillin in 1970 caused Marichal severe back pain and chronic arthritis. Besides 1971, in which he was an All-Star and pitched to a 2.94 ERA, he never reached quality starter status again. His final 2 seasons as a Giant, he struggled with a 17-31 record and a 3.77 ERA. His contract was sold to the Boston Red Sox after the 1973 season. Juan found a decent amount of success, going 5-1 in 11 games, but was released after the season. Following his release, he signed with the Los Angeles Dodgers, arch rivals of his original team, the San Francisco Giants. At the time, the Dodgers-Giants rivalry was at a peak. The Roseboro incident from 10 years prior still had an effect on Marichal and the 2 teams. The Roseboro incident, for those who don't know, was a 14-minute brawl between the 2 teams in 1965, which was started by Marichal. After striking Dodgers catcher John Roseboro twice with his bat after a throwback to the pitcher almost struck him in the ear, chaos ensued. Marichal was suspended for 8 games following the incident. Dodgers fans never forgave Juan. It took a statement from Roseboro himself to calm them down a bit. But it really didn't matter, as Marichal gave Dodgers fans another reason to hate him. He got lit up during his time in the blue and white. In only 2 starts, Marichal went 6 innings, giving up 9 earned runs, which comes out to a 13.50 ERA, before officially calling it quits. Despite the not-so-happy ending, Marichal still had a fantastic career. Winning 243 games and finishing with a career 2.89 ERA, Manito, as they called him, earned his spot in the Hall in 1983. He was inducted as a Giant because clearly anywhere else just didn't work for the Dominican dandy. Number 2, Ty Cobb and the Philadelphia Athletics. Ty Cobb never saw himself playing with a team other than the Detroit Tigers. The 12-time batting champion and Triple Crown winner accrued quite the resume, driving in over 1,800 runs, hitting to a .368 clip, and stealing 869 bases, a record that remained intact for almost 50 years. Cobb retired after 22 seasons, but not because he wanted to stop playing. Him and fellow future Hall of Famer Tris Speaker were coerced into retirement due to game-fixing allegations from Dutch Leonard. Leonard was a former player that Cobb managed, and still had some animosity toward. MLB Commissioner Kennesaw Mountain Landis held several secret hearings with Cobb, Speaker, and other former players regarding the allegations. Letters between Cobb and the other player involved, Smokey Joe Wood, proved that bets were replaced, but on horse racing, and not the said Tigers vs. Indians game from 8 years prior that Dutch Leonard claimed. After another hearing with American League directors, and a final hearing after that, in which Leonard refused to show up, Judge Landis denied them of any wrongdoing and allowed Cobb and Speaker back into the league as free agents. The Tigers told Cobb that they weren't interested in a reunion, so he signed with the Philadelphia Athletics just in time for the 1927 season. Cobb said he only returned to the game with a goal of vindication, wanting to go out on his own terms. Cobb's play never faltered, as he managed to hit .343 in 2 seasons with the A's. He became the first man to join the 4,000 hit club with a double against his former team, the Tigers, on July 18, 1927. To this day, he holds the record for most consecutive seasons hitting over 300, with 23. His career .366 batting average also remains an MLB record. And coming in at number 1, you guessed it, Babe Ruth and the Boston Braves. One of the most surprising entries on this list might be Babe Ruth. The Great Bambino is one of the most recognizable baseball names of all time, especially in the Yankees' signature pinstripes. Although Ruth didn't begin his career with the Yankees, that's where his legend was born. After hitting a career low .288, however, which was his lowest batting average since 1916, the Yankees released Ruth. After 6 seasons with the Boston Red Sox and 15 seasons with the New York Yankees, 39-year-old Sultan of Swat still felt he had more to give to the game of baseball. He reached out to Yankees owner Jacob Ruppert about managing the team, but Ruppert had his trust and support invested in their current manager at the time, Joe McCarthy. The same day of his release, Ruth's rights were traded to the Boston Braves. Babe had hopes that the Braves would let him become a manager, but Braves owner Judge Emil Fox had no intention of giving him the managerial nod and primarily traded him as an attraction. Ticket sales did rise, but Ruth's batting average and overall playing ability didn't. Ruth hit .181 in 28 games with Boston, hitting his final 6 homers with the Braves. The Babe tried for his release and officially retired on June 2, 1935. He finished his career with 714 home runs, now 3rd all-time. He was inducted into the inaugural Baseball Hall of Fame class in 1936. Of the 5 inaugural members, Ruth was the only one to never manage a baseball team. Although he unfortunately never reached his goal of managing, he undoubtedly had one of the greatest careers ever. What are your thoughts on the list? Were there any key Hall of Famers that I missed? Let me know in the comments below. This has been Matthew Perry from GMs for Hire. I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching.